So before we get into this writing task 1 sample, let's recall the structure for writing task 1. So in first paragraph, we will be writing an introduction part, second paragraph overview, and thirdly body paragraph. So now let's start with this introduction part where we will be paraphrasing this question. So the question is, the world production output from Asia, Europe, and the rest of the world in different years. So now we will be paraphrasing this question. So now since this is bar diagram, so we will be writing bar. So for the introduction part, the bar graph. Now it's about the world production output. So it's kind of like comparison. So we can simply write the bar graph compares the, now instead of world production, global production output by Asia, Europe, and the rest of the world. So now there's in different years. So here's from 1840 to 2000. So we'll simply write either from 1840 to 2000 or between 1840 and 2000. So this is your introduction part. So now let's move on to the overview part, and remember we will not be writing any data. For example, in 1980 the world production output from Asia was 50 and it dropped to 30. We will not include data in an overview. So now since this is dynamic graph, we'll look at what does the data do from the start to the end. So as for Asia, so it is the highest one in the initial year 1840, but by 2000 it has decreased slightly. Similarly for Europe, so it has experienced fluctuation, and in terms of rest of the world there's significant increase. So we'll just write these things in our overview. So now always start your overview by writing overall. So after overall, make sure you write comma. So now let's move on here again. So we can clearly see that in the beginning or in the initial year 1840, so this has dominated Asia. The production output from Asia has dominated, and this Europe has experienced fluctuation. However, this rest of the world, the production from the rest of the world has increased significantly. So now we'll just write these main features in our overview. So overall, so after writing this, if you don't have any idea what to write at all, so you can write, it is evident that, it can be clearly seen that, so whatever suits you. So overall, at the beginning, Asia, so it's dominant one, so we'll just write Asia led world production, but over time or throughout the year the rest of the world's proportion increased significantly. So now we'll write this also. So the use of but has made this sentence a compound sentence. So I will be adding one more sentence so that I can make it complex. Whereas the Europe experienced fluctuation, so it has experienced fluctuations also, and there is an overall decrease as well. So fluctuations and overall decrease so in its production output. Okay, so now this is your introduction and overview. So before directly writing this body paragraph, we have to organize our data and categories logically. So you have to plan before you write. So now let's move on to body paragraph. So I will be writing this first, 1840. So after that I will be writing of this 1880 and 1920, and after that this and this. So now let's do it. So initial data is very crucial, so remember, write this first. So let's start. So we can see in 1840, or initially, this Asia has the highest production output value, which is 50, and Europe it has 40, and the rest of the world it's just 10. So now instead of writing 40, I will be writing the term which is greater. So in the initial year, Asia, so you can vary your language by yourself. So instead of writing Asia dominated world production output, you can also write in the initial year the world production output value of Asia was predominant with 50, or accounting for around 50%. So since this is not exact, so I will be using approximation marker. So in the initial year, Asia dominated world population output, accounting for around 50%, which was, so now 40, 50. So there's a difference of 10, which was greater, which was greater by 10 than that of Europe. So I will be adding this again so that I can make my sentence complex. While the rest of the world comprised of, or incorporated, comprised of 10 only. So after this I will be writing this data again for Asia. So it has dropped and again dropped, right? So I will not be writing the figure dropped to 30 and again it dropped to 20 and again it increased. So instead of writing that, I will be using these two together. So subsequently the proportion of Asia, or the share of Asia, or the portion of Asia declined drastically. So this is an adverb, drastically, to 20 in 1920. So again, however, so it increased. So instead of writing increased every time, I will be using another verb. It went up to almost 45 by 2000 directly. So you are done with first paragraph. So again, to be clear, I'm done with the Asia. So now in second body paragraph, I will be writing Europe and the rest of the world. Now let's move forward to second body paragraph, where I'll be writing about Europe and the rest of the world. Since in first paragraph, body paragraph, I have already written things about these three categories in 1840, so I will be writing from here. So now let's start from Europe. So we can see that, so from 40 it has increased, so the data figure has increased, and again it has decreased. As for this rest of the world, the data, it has been increasing, so we will write these things. So let's start. In terms of Europe, its output, so instead of writing increased, went up, again I'll use observed. From 40, we have already written this, 40 to 50, from 1880 to 1920, 1880 to 1920, and so it has dropped again, dropped rapidly to 28 by 2000. Or you can also write, so from 50 it has dropped down to almost 40, and again almost 30. So 50 minus 30, 20. So now instead of writing this, we can also write and dropped by 20 by the year 2000 and reached to 28. So you can write this. So again, don't forget to use your approximation marker. So after that, I'll write this. So since it has dropped, so in contrast, the share, or you can also write production from the rest of the world. So data has increased. So instead of writing from the rest of the world observed increased, I'll change the language. From the world experienced a significant rise after 1850. After 1880, increasing to around, so it's about 32% by the final year. Okay, so now we are done with the second body paragraph and the sample for writing task 1. So after you're done writing, make sure you read this all again so that you have not repeated the words continuously and your grammar is right. To make sure all of these things are right, so please go through this again. So thank you. Bye bye.